Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to a surprise episode of Geeky Gentlemen that we literally just decided to record. I'm Sid Part 2, joining me today is Rasco. Rasco, what are we about to talk about?
The most shocking, saddest thing that could possibly happen. Zack Snyder's stepping away from Justice League because his daughter committed suicide and he needs to be with his family.
And apparently Joss Whedon is stepping in to finish the movie. Okay, first and foremost, we're getting this news from Twitter. I'm not 100% sure on how much of it's true, how much of it's not. There's always, of course, the possibility that this all turns out to be fake and we look like idiots or something. But wow, this is like a big ass shock right at the moment. I was just sitting here talking to Rasco. We finished doing our fan film review, and I'm browsing what's trending, and there's this jaw-dropping news about Zack Snyder.
Oh my!
And
God.
Holy shit! That's just this is seriously where were you the day this happened? That's what this feels like to me right now.
No, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Oh my God!
Okay, let's both be upfront. Neither of us like Batman v Superman, and both of us were worried about Justice League. And of course, if Whedon is stepping in to finish the movie, I highly doubt that he's going to be able to change the overall quality of the film.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I'm not sure if it's polite to talk about this, but it's hard not to take that side of things into consideration. I don't like Batman vs Superman. I think Batman vs Superman is a very bad movie, with interesting ideas in it, but that don't come together. I feel a lot of that is Zack Snyder not being a very competent filmmaker overall. And so I definitely was and am in the camp that I did not want Zack Snyder to still be attached to Justice League. No matter, they did the interviews, they had people come on set and, look at things, and they did all this stuff, this dog and pony show to try to convince people that Zack Snyder, that they knew what they were doing with Justice League, they learned from their mistakes. I didn't care. I wanted him off the project. Never would in a million years would I wish for this to happen to a person.
Absolutely, dude. This is the thing. I mean, this is where, you separate the artist from their work right here. I mean, this is one of those things where when people talk about Zack Snyder, when people, make jokes that, oh, I don't like his movies or whatever, put that all to the side. This is horrible. I mean, this is really sad.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Just on a basic human level, I don't know how you read this and go anything. I don't know how you have any other reaction than, damn, dude, that's really sad. This is the worst thing. This is the worst news that you could possibly hear.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, and I'm gonna look just to see, but looking at the latest tweet updates from just people with their general reactions, I'm really I'm seeing mostly just people going oh, that really sucks, but I am at the same time I'm excited that he's off the project, which is good. I'm glad that no one in the fan that it seems to be generally everyone going, okay, this sucks for him. I'm still allowed to be somewhat, I'm still allowed to be excited for possible changes to the movie now that he's not attached. And that it's a really fine line, because I don't want to make it sound like I am happy that he has gone from the movie because of this.
Yeah.
I think the people that said stuff like, oh, by anything we can do to get him off the movie, do it. And yeah, I'm just looking through my feed. Jeff Johns is tweeting about this, so this has got to be confirmed. If you got people up on the ladder like Jeff Johns tweeting about it,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel it's appropriate to be somewhat relieved that he's off the project?
This is okay. Like for me, that's the last thing that I care about when it comes to this story. I mean, I expect that movie to not be very good. So it's even despite I've heard even some news very recently, not related to this, that makes me even more trepidatious about that movie with some of the reshoot news that there's been. But there's reshoot news about everything now, so I don't know how much of it you can trust. But it's hard. It's really difficult to even talk about it because ultimately it's the reason why he's stepping away that makes it just that's what's difficult about it, is like he's stepping away because somebody and his daughter committed suicide. To say that, will the movies be better? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you get into a weird place where you're like, the movies will be better.
The movies don't matter.
Yeah,
is the thing. The news of the movies matter. Like I guess I'm reminded of when Carrie Fisher died, and immediately people started to buzz about, oh well, what does this mean for episode 8 and 9, and it's like, guys, this is a person's life, and yeah, I'm really feeling that way, but it's so weird to digest the news in the way in which I have, because the very first thing I read was Zack Snyder stepping down from Justice League due to family tragedy, Joss Whedon to finish film. Like, it's hard not to associate, like, immediately, like, when that was the very first headline, it's hard not to go, okay, what does this mean for the movie? Could it possibly move? I don't know. And I'm left in this place where I'm like, do I even want the movie to be involved in the news at all? But at the same time, how is it not?
Yeah.
That's like the most notable thing he's doing right now. That is the thing he's been attached to that has had all of this controversy surrounding it. And so for him to be stepping down from this, even though it's under the most horrific circumstances, it's hard not to question the effect it will have on something else.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. It's scary to even talk about. I mean, I don't know, like, to get away from the really sad part of this. I think that it's interesting that Joss Whedon will have been involved with Avengers and Justice League at this point. That's crazy. It's under such horrible circumstances, but that's really interesting. It makes me wonder. I guess these two things are unrelated, but we haven't heard anything about Justice League 2. That was pulled off of their release schedule. They kind of like quietly put that away. I wonder if that's related to this. I don't think so, because I think that was kind of happening before this would have happened, because this has been kept under wraps, I guess, for a month. So
that's the thing that I find really interesting about it. Apparently his daughter committed suicide back in March, and they just released the news today. So that's more than a month and a half. That's almost 2 months, assuming, right? Mm-hmm. Joss Whedon, the last big news we got about him was he was attached to Batgirl, and that news came out back at the end of March. And so I'm really, really wondering when negotiations for him to take over began. That's something that I am, like, really scratching my head about. And, like I can't remember if you said this just before we started recording or not, but just the practical side of literally how could that possibly have been kept a secret in this day and age that his daughter committed suicide?
Yeah.
It's incredibly sad, but just how do you keep something like that under wraps in, this Hollywood world where, like, even things that are not a story become a story?
Yeah.
That baffles my mind. And so it's hard not to, especially that there's relative distance from the event itself to now. It is hard not to really question what's going on here and question the studio politics, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the real kicker, is that it's something that already happened. It's not like we're learning about something new. That's like another layer to this story that makes it so interesting. And oh my God, it's really, I don't even know what to think about this. It's just one of those things where I can't even believe this is true. You hear it and you're like, that must be a lie. That must be some sort of joke that's going around on the internet, a really fucked up joke. When you, oh my God, though, but when you look into it and it's legitimate, that is, it's one of the most shocking things. And it's one of those things where you so oftentimes forget about, like, we think of like industries as like machines where things just go and they go and they go and you don't stop. And sometimes I'll sit back and I'll think about, like, what is this person's personal life like? Like, what is there? And this is one of those stories where it wakes you up and you're like, yeah, guys, it's not a machine. It doesn't just pump out. Hollywood is not just this continuous cycle of robots pumping out shit. It's real people. And when stuff like this happens, it wakes you up to that. You're like, oh my God, that's crazy.
And that's one of the things that makes this so hard to talk about is it's, again, it was a person's life and somehow they kept it under wraps for 2 months. Just so they could, come clean about it once they had the film secure. What was that conversation? What happened there? I don't understand this. Like, did Zack Snyder come into work the day his daughter died and say, guys, I can't do the movie anymore? And they're like, okay, we understand, but we need you to keep it quiet till we can find someone else to finish it because we don't want the optics of this to look like the movie's out of control again. Because, that's very potentially the thinking that went on, because any little bit of news that's come out about Justice League that's even slightly negative has been people's, and this was Batman vs. Superman as well, has been people's rallying cry to say this movie's going to suck, it's going to be awful.
Yeah.
And so, if this news had come out and they hadn't paired it with the Whedon news, what would that be? What was that, a calculus that went into it? And if so, what does that say about, WB as a studio? That's just real. And I don't want to be harsh on WB if they didn't do it. Maybe it was, there's, every possibility that Zack Snyder was aware of the optics of it, and maybe he wanted to quell down any worry. And so he decided to keep it a secret. I don't know. I don't know the details here. I don't want to sound like I'm putting words in people's mouths.
I have an article pulled up right here, and it says, Snyder, after screening a rough cut of Justice League for fellow filmmakers and friends, wanted to add additional scenes, so he brought Whedon on board to write them. But as he prepared to shoot the scenes in England, Snyder realized that it was not time to leave home. That is, oh my God, that's so sad, but oh my God.
It is just really, really difficult news. And I don't know, man. I'm just blown away by this. This is one of the hardest things to hear and to try to wrap your head around. It's going to be weird because, everyone was so ready to hate Justice League, good or bad, right? And I'll admit, I thought that it probably was not in good hands, that it probably was not going to turn out to be a good movie. What does that make people do once it comes out now?
I know.
How does this news affect the way people talk about this movie?
Wow. I mean, I don't know, it makes it a much more important movie than I think it seemed like it was going to be prior to this. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I feel like an asshole just talking about anything that's not, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for you, Zack Snyder.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard not to discuss. Like, and that's my thing is I wanted to talk about this because I have all these conflicting emotions right now.
Yeah.
I have all these conflicting thoughts. And I feel like if we're all being perfectly honest, especially with the way that news was presented to you, it's hard not to just go, well, what does this mean for the movie? Like, even if you feel like a dick for thinking that, you're still thinking that.
Yeah, like, it's almost interesting. Like, is it a matter of they delayed this being released to the public so that they could have that and Joss Whedon is attached to the project now part?
I don't know, man. I really don't. Like, you know, there are all kinds of calls, like fire Zack Snyder or Zack Snyder's the worst filmmaker ever kind of thing after BVS. And then people are ready to say that again with this movie. And so once it comes out, how does that crowd react? What does that crowd do?
I'm scared. It's the internet, dude.
Like, that's the thing, is like we've seen just a complete devolution in the way people talk about each other, in the way people talk about things. Like, you know, when you and I do a fan film review on a fan film we both agree is bad, we take great care to talk about it in a way that is still respectful to the person.
Mm-hmm.
People do not do that when they talk about bad movies.
Yeah, they don't.
If this movie comes out and people are like super harsh on it, will that same attitude towards Zack Snyder be the case now? Or maybe I'm, you know, hopeful, or maybe seeing, hey, he's an actual person who has actual tragedy in his life. Maybe we shouldn't like withhold our opinion or anything, but maybe we shouldn't be assholes. Can this serve as a moment for what has become a very toxic community in the comic book fandom, superhero fandom? Can this serve as a moment for people to better themselves?
I hope that's. I hope that's the case, dude. I honestly have a hard time imagining somebody sitting at their house and thinking that they could possibly make any sort of like ad hominem attack at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, from here on out, I think that hopefully is that it becomes very much a discussion about when it comes to Justice League time. I hope that it's just a conversation about the movie at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, and I mean, and I of course I take part in this. The whole, when a bad movie comes out, let's all make fun of it. You know, that happens, but I think that there's nothing wrong with treating Justice League in a different light and just really talking about it in a different manner because of the added context of what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that movie, we talk about it as a movie and we don't reach outside of it to try to get some sort of revenge on anybody who was involved making it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. It's just, oh my God. It's the saddest thing on earth, dude. It's so sad.
It totally is. And I don't know how to feel about it. It's like every single story reporting it has that coupled news of Snyder stepping down, Whedon stepping in. And like, it's hard to tear yourself away from that. It's like, it's in the way in which we're getting this story. You know, when Carrie Fisher died, I got news that Carrie Fisher died, not that, okay, Carrie Fisher's dead and we're doing CG Leia for the rest of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't get one answer and immediately get the other.
Yeah.
You know. The headline is the conflict. And that's weird. And it creates such a bizarre juxtaposed feeling in me. We're like, I don't know how to react to that. I don't know what it is I am feeling. I don't know what these contradictory emotions are. Because like the dickhead, like, non-existent internet troll, let's hope, the non-existent internet troll is like, yes, fucking good. Now maybe Justice League won't suck. Like, there's, like, it sucks to think about that, but some kid out there's acting that way.
Yeah.
And yet, there's undeniably a part of me that's like, if he's not involved in the movie, maybe it will be better for it. But at the same time, I would never, ever want this to be the thing that took him out.
No, yeah, that's what it is, dude. It's like,
I can't help, like, and I feel like a dick just for even thinking on that level. I feel like such an ass for even on some level acknowledging that's how I feel, but at least I'm being honest. That is literally a thought that crossed my mind when I read that headline.
And that's why
I
this is...
can't help it.
I think that conflict in and of itself is kind of like what makes this news not just like a sad piece of news, but like a really strange and important story of the year in terms of like the film / comic book fandom community.
Mm-hmm.
Because it kind of puts people in a place that they've never been in. It's like, this could happen to anyone,
mm-hmm.
but this happened.
And
we're not theorizing anymore. That's what's crazy about it.
And importantly, it's like, it's someone so young. His daughter was 20, I believe it said. His daughter was 20. Dude, I still remember being 20. It's someone so young, and like...
I'm almost 20.
Yeah, with Carrie Fisher, it was like sad news, don't get me wrong, but, she partied hard and she was getting up there in years. It was not unbelievable news. This has a level of just awestruck shock for me that something like this could happen. And that's, here's something that is worth talking about. That is depression. That is suicide. It can happen to anyone. It can affect anyone. And it's something that we put out and we act like, oh, that only happens to, certain kinds of people or whatever. No, everyone can be touched by suicide. And this is kind of that perfect example of it, where you never see it coming and you cannot imagine the profound effect it has on people.
Yeah. Here's in this article I'm reading from the Hollywood Reporter, this is the last bit of the article. It says, the thought of his daughter's writing prompts Zack to recall another memory. Autumn had a quote that she included in everything she wrote. Every single thing, chuckles Zack. It's from author Chris Palahniuk. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is, but it says, we all die. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will. Maybe this helps, Zack says.
Wow. That's so hard, and I feel so bad for their family. That just sucks. I don't know, Rasco. This is one of the weirdest news days I've ever seen,
Yeah.
That's... I'm kind of out of stuff to say because I'm just so conflicted on how I feel about this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have nothing else to say. It's sad,
mm-hmm.
and it leaves and it creates an uncertain future. But the main takeaway is just, this is really sad.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I can say is, anyone, if you ever have thoughts of suicide, to not do it, get help. Because you have no idea the impact that has on those around you. If you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for others. That's all I got. Everyone, thanks for listening. Bye.